My name is Terry Hinton, and I am the GM for Ironside's relationship with AWS, and we're here to talk about an AWS program today. Before we launch into today's program, though, I want to tell you about the upcoming Take30. If we can go to the next slide. So on Thursday, June 6th, we'll be doing the next Take30 on generative AI. This is a very hot topic that our customers ask a lot about. And in this particular session, we're going to talk about how generative AI relates in the retail industry. So if you're in that industry, be sure and check that out. And also on the link on the page, if you go to this page, you'll find all of our past Take30. So you may find other topics that are of interest across the data and analytics spectrum. I want to give just a quick introduction to Ironside if you haven't worked with us before. Ironside has been a consultancy in the data and analytics space for the past 25 years. And during those years, we've done numerous projects with hundreds of customers, from data strategy to business intelligence to data engineering, AI, machine learning, and then we also have a managed service practice that we deliver things all related into the data and analytics space. And over the past 5+ years, we've been really focused on our partnership with AWS. We're an advanced tier partner. We have numerous certifications at the individual level across a wide spectrum of AWS services. And then we have a company-wide data and analytics competency that's relevant to today's topic. And so very specific to today's topic is we're going to talk about the AWS D2E program, Data-Driven Everything. This is a program we're a part of in terms of their delivery teams. And with us today to talk about the program is Paul Hardy, our AVP of Professional Services that spans the delivery services that I spoke about just before. And then we have Eduardo Arrazo, who's our engagement manager on our data strategy practice and very instrumental in driving the D2E program for Ironside. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eduardo.
All right, thank you, Terry. So to kick us off today, we're just going to be covering some of the objectives that we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to start off with what exactly is the D2E program and what are its goals. We're going to be going through the process for D2E in some detail. We're going to be talking about some of the outcomes that you can expect to get after completing the process in the program. And then who is this a right fit for? And if that is a good fit, then how can we get started with the D2E engagement between your organization and Ironside? So a quick overview here. D2E program is an experiential approach to help customers really become data-driven as an organization. So it starts off with kind of an immersive approach, a 2-day workshop that Paul will cover here in the next couple of slides. But D2E is really aimed at creating a vision where you can craft or create some value with data for your organization. It's going to help you establish the changes that are needed for culture, people, and process to continuously and iteratively innovate with your data strategy. And lastly, really create incremental value along the way as you mature your data strategy. So with that overview, I will kick it off to Paul to get into some of the actual methodology.
All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Hardy. I run our professional services organization. We've had the privilege of working with AWS for several years, as Terry alluded to, and we're very excited about the D2E program. We come from a history of creating data strategies for our clients, and AWS's methodology that they use both internally and with clients is something that fits very nicely with our history in data and analytics. What you see here is sort of the comprehensive nature of the D2E program. You see that there are 4 available workshops in D2E. These workshops are all available to clients, and of course the logical question is which workshop is appropriate for me. They work a little bit from left to right, but what's really important about them is having a conversation about your own data maturity in your organization. That level of maturity actually drives which of these is appropriate for you, be that just one or all. And starting from the far left is kind of the beginning of that maturity curve. If you have an organization that is around which you need to educate people and get the mindset focused on the power of data and how it can impact your organization, your culture, your business priorities, it's starting at a very high level with executives in the organization to really align all stakeholders around the possibility created by data in the organization. Then you see people and process, as it says, that focuses on building the right organization, building the right processes, so that you can leverage a modern data strategy to your advantage. And you see that second bullet point, how to innovate using data at scale, right? So the objective here, of course, is to ultimately be able to leverage all of the data in your organization over the course of your own maturing. And you have to have the right organization in place to be able to do that over time. And then you see technology, learn how to create technology foundations that scale. Obviously, as a hyperscaler, AWS is very experienced at developing that kind of technological foundation. We build those for our clients every day. So that workshop is about really understanding cloud technology and data technology and AWS services that support that. And that is dependent on having done the mindset workshop. So those two actually come as a pair. And lastly, you see mobilize, and that's where we're actually going to focus our time for the rest of this discussion is on the mobilize workshop. You see there it says develop new data products to achieve business goals. So what's very interesting and powerful about mobilize is that its objective is to build over a very brief period of time an actual data product, cloud-based data product, and we'll talk about that in more detail in the upcoming slides. But Amazon has a very tried and true methodology for this. You'll see it says there, Amazon's working backwards approach. We'll talk about this in more detail in this conversation. And you see the last bullet point outlines an iterative process to develop and operationalize the vision. So you'll see it's very much about Amazon's concept of a flywheel in which you start quickly with a project that develops momentum, but you do it in such a way that you're able to continuously innovate and build off of what you start with. And so that is a very powerful approach. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail now. So the Mobilize workshop, the fourth one, the one on the far right, is the one that we're going to talk about in detail. And first of all, what's most important is what do I get out of as a client doing this Mobilize workshop? And the answer is what you see at the top of the page here. We will actually launch a production-ready use case in the cloud, leveraging your data on a data platform. So that is the real objective. While we talked about the three other workshops that sort of get your organization ready and mature it, by the time you get to the Mobilize workshop, and it needn't be preceded by the others if your organization is sufficiently mature, you can go to the Mobilize workshop, and the outcome is to create an actual MVP in a production level in the cloud. So very, very powerful result for this, and it's to be done over a period really of 3 to 4 months. Okay, so let's sort of walk through what those 3 to 4 months entail here as the overall Mobilize process. In the center, you see that blue square. It talks about a 2-day workshop. That is a very powerful workshop, and it is like the workshops you saw on the prior page, but it is preceded over a 2-week period to prepare for that. It's identifying who the right participants are, both on the business and the technology side. It's identifying a set of personas that will be worked on within the workshop itself. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But you spend that time preparing so that you can be most effective in the 2 days itself. And you see sort of 2 components to the workshop itself: think big and work backwards. So you see at the bottom of the page, think big, start small, scale fast. That is the basic approach of the Mobilize workshop and of working through the D2E program. And it's really encapsulated in this Mobilize workshop and in the 4-month period that it entails, right? So, and that process of thinking big and starting small begins in this Mobilize workshop. So on day 1, we'll execute that think big portion of things and work backwards. What that really means is, understand ambitious outcomes, understand the business value they create, understand how they impact the right personas and parts of your organization or customers, and and start with the end in mind is the classic expression, right? So that's how the process works. It's by really focusing on what the business benefit would or could be in a data-driven organization, and working backwards from there. There's a lot of work that goes into that in day one. And then in day two, we actually identify the minimum viable product that's going to be built in those next 60 to 90 days. And there's a great deal of work that goes into crystallizing what that is, which of course you must do if it's something you're really going to deploy and build. And so in about 2 weeks after, 2 weeks time after the completion of the workshop itself, we create a very detailed program for building that minimum viable product. Defines exactly what the product is, who it's going to benefit and how, what technology is going to, architecture is going to support it, what are the sprints that will get it done within that 60 to 90 day period, and also that view of scale fast. How do you make the next turn of the flywheel after you've deployed this first MVP? What can you expect to be able to continue to leverage what you've started and scale fast? So as you can see, the Mobilize workshop is a very, very powerful exercise for an organization. So I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail now about what happens in that 2-day workshop and what comes out in that report at the end of the 2 weeks. So if you look at the right-hand side here, I'm just really going to focus on those deliverables. So what you see there on the deliverables are business and technical alignment. This is achieved because you've picked the right personas in your preparation phase or the right stakeholders to join the workshop in the first place. And that certainly spans both business and technical stakeholders within your organization. Next, understanding of use cases from inside and outside the industry. There is a great deal of time spent understanding which use cases are most appropriate. What are the most creative things you can do? What examples can you bring within your particular function, your particular industry, or can you bring from outside verticals? And AWS and when we conduct our workshops, bring that perspective, because as Terry said, we've been doing this for 25 years across every imaginable vertical and can help bring some of those innovative ideas from outside your own industry. Third bullet point there, storyboard describing a day in the life across all 3 personas. Now, first talk about 3 personas. There's a series of breakouts in the workshop that focus on personas that are agreed to during prep. And so what that means is that you can build data-driven use cases that service your internal constituencies. It may be a problem you're having in logistics and warehouse management, or it could be addressing external constituencies, whether that's a vendor or, of course, a customer, right? So it's always terrific to focus on a customer. But what we'll do in the preparation stage is understand where you're experiencing the greatest pain or have the greatest opportunity and identify those personas. And simultaneously in the workshop, we'll work through outcomes for all of those personas. The benefit of this is that you identify multiple use cases. Now, only one of them will move forward to the MVP, but you're putting your best minds to work in this workshop. So why not cast a wide net and identify as many use cases, many high valued use cases as you can for key personas in your organization. Then in that bullet point, it also says, we'll describe a day in the life. This is a really powerful process by which you really focus on the persona, who they are, what are their responsibilities, what processes do they control, how are they measured, what makes them happy on a workaday basis. And you describe that end in mind. What is their world like when this MVP is actually created for them? How is their life different, whether that's a customer or an internal constituency? Then you see draft of a PR, public relations / FAQ, to describe the benefit of these new capabilities. So this is another very powerful tool. It comes from Amazon's culture itself. Many of you that know Amazon may have heard of this. It's actually part of sort of common business lore, where Amazon creates a storyboard or an article that might be publishable that identifies and describes what the outcome was and how it made, what its success felt like and looked like and what it accomplished for people. Very powerful technique that Amazon uses, again, both internally and has adopted in this methodology. So in the exercise, that's what you do. You spend some time describing, how is life better at the end of this, and how is that described to constituents in again sort of a press article And what are the FAQs? Like what would people really want to understand about this, and how am I describing it to them? The frequently asked questions about it. Okay. Next, you see flywheel to describe the use case. So that's back to the concept of scale fast. You know, how will this be able to innovate going forward and scale going forward? Next, description of MVP priority features, as well as a roadmap of fast followers. So fast followers is that scale piece, but the MVP is because the objective is to move fast and create a result quickly, right? So that stakeholders can see and taste and feel success. And so you have to be very focused on what the features of the MVP are. It is not going to be the whole solution that solves all the problems that you identified. It is, in fact, just that first step, that first turn of the flywheel. So you do have to prioritize what the features are. Recommended architectural components necessary for the use case. Understandably, we're not going to be able to develop something and make it real without identifying the underlying architecture. We have the expertise to do this, as do the partners that we work with at AWS. And then ultimately the production ready MVP, right? So that's at the end of a 60 to 90 day period where that MVP is actually built and deployed, a production level MVP. So I won't go over the activities actually in the interest of time. I think I kind of described them as I was describing the deliverables themselves. So let's see, with that, let me take a quick look at those. I think we can move forward from those. All right, with that, I'm going to pass it back to Eduardo, who's going to talk about for whom this is a good opportunity. Eduardo.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is a fantastic program. It really helps you to kind of leverage, like Paul said, the best minds in your organization. But now you're thinking, this sounds great. Is this a good fit for me? So there's a couple guidelines here that help us define that. First one being that semi-preferential if you or your organization are already an AWS consumer or customer for their analytical services. A lot of what the D2E program is based off of is leveraging AWS technologies. So that is definitely preferential to get going. From an organizational standpoint, you really should be looking for an organization that is prioritizing their data strategy or looking to gain alignment between your business and technology teams, specifically around data strategy. So any of those situations where the business is asking for things and your tech teams are trying to build something to match that, right? D2E program would be a fantastic opportunity to actually get those solutions off the ground and get that good MVP to actually start producing value. The D2E program is also excellent at enterprise level strategy. So anything that's going to cut across many different departments or your entire organization, that's going to be a fantastic approach for the D2E program. And then lastly, and this is kind of the key one, is organizations that are seeking to monetize their data assets. So you're really trying to gain value or make an impact or move the needle with your organization. D2E is definitely for you. Okay, so if all that sounds great, how do you actually get started? Well, you can give us a call as an AWS certified D2E partner. We've already been through the process, got certified, so we are enabled to work with customers who want to reach out to us and engage in this program. The entire process really starts off before even the mobilize, the workshops, any of them, and leading into mobilize, starts off with some pre-planning and what we call the first call deck. This first call deck outlines the program and starts collecting some information. So we require that C-level executives or leadership from across the organization, from business, data, or IT, also join this first call deck. And this is also important so you can actually get buy-in to actually build the MVP and actually identify the right use cases that are going to be put forth in the D2E program. And the last one here in blue, kind of the big one that everyone gets excited about, there is no upfront cost for engaging in D2E with this before we get to the MVP build process. So the actual workshop, the first call deck, all of that is free to engage with. Obviously, that leads into the MVP process where Ironside as a technology services provider would then kick in and actually help build the MVP for what comes out of the Mobilize workshop in that final readout.
I'll leave this up for just a moment. This is one client's response to having gone through this process at the CEO level. And again, I'll just emphasize that organizations of different levels of maturity can leverage the D2E program in different ways. Those initial workshops that help get executive teams aligned, help understand what the impact will be on the organization from a process and organization perspective itself, understanding what technology platform is required, what investments might be required, and how a cloud-based, data-driven architecture helps support business functions going forward. All of those are conversations held in those initial workshops that help align executives. And then the last workshop that we've discussed in more detail, the mobilization workshop, really creates that tangible outcome. And so if organizations are already mature enough, they understand the value of data, they're chomping at the bit to get an actual result and get something deployed and tangible, and it's a proof point for the organization. The mobilization workshop does that. And as you can see, this client was very satisfied with that. So with that, and this was a brief workshop, a brief Take 30 today, but what we're going to do is pause and see if any questions came in. We'll go back to Terry and see if there are questions we can answer for the audience.
I'll start out with a question here on commitment levels. The question is, what is the level of commitment required from my company? So we heard about the process, but a little bit deeper dive on the commitment level from the company. I don't know, Eduardo or Paul, you want to take that?
Sure, I can talk to that and see if Paul wants to fill in some gaps. So from a time perspective, the planning stage is a couple of weeks, right? So that's when we start talking to your organization, identifying the business leaders that may need to be involved. And again, we kick off the entire process with what we call the first call deck. So we outline some of the program there and also start collecting some information during that process. A quick call, right? This can either be virtual or in person when we kick off the D2E program, but we start off with the first call deck. The actual immersive workshops that happen a few weeks after that are a 2-day event. Again, can also be done in person or virtually, but those 2 days are going to be immersive. We definitely require for a team for the organization to be representative of the entire organization at large. So we're going to have leadership from business, from your data organization, and from IT present to actually build out the MVP that we talk about in the workshops. After those 2 days complete, kind of the immersive program, Ironside would take a couple of weeks, usually 2 weeks, to really fine tune the final readout and collect all the valuable information that was produced during the workshops. That final readout is again what outlines kind of what everything that we talked about, a lot of the deliverables that happened in the workshops and the breakout sessions, up to and inclusive of the MVP and a timeline for those 60 to 90 days to get the first build up and running, the first turn of the flywheel. So again, that's kind of the general timeline for this process. If there are more turns of the flywheel after that, we're happy to engage with that. But the D2E program itself would start with that first call deck and end in the MVP. So total is total time commitment from starting to creating that first valuable asset is, again, about 3 to 4 months total of what we actually look at. And that would involve, again, individuals and leaders from across the organization, both from technology side and from the business side.
All right. Thank you very much for the questions and the answers. And we're almost at time here. So I just want to call out a couple of things. First off, thank you very much for attending, and encourage you to go to the website and look and see if there are other sessions that might be of interest to you. And again, we keep bringing new Take30 webinars out week to week, so keep checking the schedule out. Also, if you want to talk further about this program, would love to chat with you, and you can see Eduardo's email on the screen here. That's the point of contact to reach out. Love to talk to you across a broad range of items in the data and analytics space, looking at your projects, seeing if there's some ways we can help you accelerate. So again, thank you for your time attending, and look forward hopefully to seeing you on a future Take30 webinar. Thank you.
Thank you all.